Good morning, everyone. My name is Shadi Mito. I'm part of the TSP team at Nile.com. And as you have probably seen one or more videos that we did previously, highlighting the benefits of Microsoft Private Cloud solution, introducing innovative solutions to your current as well as future challenges in your IT environment. So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. First of all, we all know that Microsoft can monitor and manage other vendors in regards to the virtualization layer. So today we're going to be doing that exactly. We're going to be monitoring VMware infrastructure using Operations Manager 2012. But we're not going to do that natively. We're going to be using a management pack provided by a gold partner company called Veeam, in which it will extend the functionalities of System Center Operations Manager to monitor VMware infrastructure. So simply, the structure of the monitoring environment will be that we have a hardware and storage layer and the vSphere itself, and we have virtual machines over the vSphere. All this will be monitored by the Veeam management pack. In the other layer where we have the operating system layers and we have the applications, it will be done natively by the System Center Operations Manager. So this is simply a brief on how things work in regards to monitoring the VMware infrastructure. The key features that we'll be talking about today, we'll be talking about the extension of the visibility of Operation Manager to monitor the VMware infrastructure. And then we're going to be talking about the reporting capabilities, the forecasting capabilities that are provided by the management pack, the capacity planning, and so on. So VMware visibility and monitoring experience. In this part, we are going to be highlighting some of the features of Veeam Management Pack over System Center Operations Manager. So the next step is that we'll be logging to our lab. In this lab, we are having a Windows 7 client that has the operations console. And this is the operations console, and as you can see that we have successfully installed Veeam management pack. And when you install the Veeam management pack, it comes with a predefined dashboards and topologies and predefined folders as well. You can easily customize them, or you can create a new customized alert view and dashboard view depending on your need. So if we click on the all active alerts, you'll see that we have here the all active alerts. If you click on any of them, you'll see that a typical alert description and the status of the alert, as well as the severity of this alert and the priority as well. And if you click on the product knowledge, you will see the recommendation for the solution of this problem, as well as the probable cause of this problem. In fact, you can input your own company knowledge or company resolution knowledge for this problem as well. Now, the next step is that we're going to view some of the topology views, starting with the compute topology view, where you have a high-level diagram over your infrastructure. Of course, this is a lab environment, so it's not as rich as a production environment. So, as you can see that we have one data center. Inside this data center, we have one host. And in this host, we have around 5 virtual machines that we are monitoring, plus a template as well. Now you can export this view to a Visio diagram, or you can export it to any other format in any way that you want to use it. The second topology diagram is that the network topology diagram, where you will have your focus on the network layer. For example, here we have this data center, and then we expand in here that we are monitoring the network infrastructure for these virtual machines. And as you can see that we have no problems regarding them. In fact, we have some predefined actions that we can execute. For example, we can power off a specific VM. We can reboot the guest itself. We can suspend the virtual machine. So it's really interesting. It has some really interesting commands, as well as you can easily run a specific report that you may find useful to your case. The second part is the dashboards. We have some predefined dashboards. We are going to click on the top virtual machine dashboards. And these dashboards, we will find some data regarding the CPU usage and the memory, as well as the traffic and the disk usage as well. Of course, this is a lab environment. In a production environment, you will find richer dashboards for your usage. Now, as we said in the presentation, that Veeam Management Pack collects its data from the VMware host using a Veeam collective. So we have here a Veeam collective that we can manage through System Center Operations Manager as well. And you can view the status and the health status of this collective. Okay. Now we have seen in the previous part some of the features that can be provided by Veeam Management Pack over Operations Manager 2012, and how it extends the functionalities of Operations Manager 2012 to monitor VMware infrastructure. The next part would be the reporting capabilities that Veeam Management Pack can provide to your operations manager environment. If we go back to our lab environment, we'll have 3 or 4 categories that comes with the management pack itself. If we explore more into the analysis reports, we'll find reports such as data stores performance heat map, data stores usage heat map, as well as the right sizing or oversized VMs in regards to memory and CPU and storage as well. If we open the capacity planning reports, you will find a report host simulation model where you can check if your cluster can sustain one or more nodes to fail, and your service will be available. The virtual machine capacity predictions, forecasting for vSpheres and data stores as well. If we open the category for VMware Performance History Report, you will find reports such related to your performance of your virtual machine's environment. So you'll find reports such as CPU performance history, disk performance history, memory and network as well. So in this section, we have so many reports that we can view. And this is a lab environment, so we don't have really much to see in this report. So we'll be aiding with the snapshots provided by Veeam website for this purpose. So we'll be starting by the capacity planning reports, and this report will be seeing the host failure modeling, where we are going to specify the cluster that we're going to simulate on, and define the threshold in regards to the CPU, it's 80%, and for the memory, it's 80% as well, and the number of hosts to fail is 1. So when we run this report, a summary is displayed with the following attributes. So we have one cluster with 2 nodes, and the total CPU is 20.26 gigahertz, and total VMs is 106. This simulation has failed because we have a constraint in the memory usage, and it provides recommendation, tells you that you must add 23 or almost 24 gigabytes of RAM in order for this cluster to sustain one node failure. In fact, we have the donut chart where we have the number of hosts and the remaining host as well, number of CPUs and the number of memory and the remaining memories that will be removed. And as you can see that we have no problem with the CPU utilization because the threshold will not be achieved within the reporting interval, but the used memory, the threshold is achieved in currently because it has exceeded the percentage that we have specified in the threshold. Now this is a sample of the host failure model. The second report that we're going to see is the performance forecast for data stores. In this report, we're going to be predefining the data store that we're going to run this report on, and specify the number of threshold for free space is 20%, data provisioned space is 150%, and the read latency is 80%, and the write latency is 80%, and the total IOPS for this data store should not exceed 1000 IOPS. So when we run this report, you'll find a summary of the data store itself with all the capacity on it. For example, the total capacity is around 1 terabyte, 860 gigabyte, and the free space is 273 gigabyte. And this report has failed because we have two things we must do in order for this report to pass. The first is to increase the free space by 140 gigabyte. The second recommendation is to review the VM settings to reduce the over provisioning of the VM by 213 gigabyte. So this report is very useful if you want to control your resources, if you want to control the over provisioning of your virtual infrastructure. And as you can see that if we go deep into the report, you'll find that the threshold that is achieved for the free space already. And regarding the provisioned or over provisioning space, it will be achieved in an interval of 13 to 71 days. Last but not least in this category is performance forecast for vSphere cluster. In this report, we'll be simulating the cluster test on the cluster itself. We'll add the cluster that we want to test and define the threshold. In our case, the CPU will be 80% and the memory will be 85%. So the summary of the report, it will specify that it has failed as well, and the recommendation, of course, it will be adding 23 or 24 gigabytes of RAM. And as you can see that the CPU utilization, the CPU utilization the threshold will not be achieved, although the memory utilization will be achieved in an interval from day 0 to day 54. So this is why it's giving you a recommendation to add 24 gigabytes of RAM. Virtual machine capacity prediction, where you can specify your data store to see how many virtual machines it can sustain besides the existing workload. So you simply specify the data store that you want to test on it, and then specify the template workload or sample workload that you will reside on this data store. And you specify the threshold, and the free space is 10%, and the total IOPS should not exceed 1000 IOPS. So when you run the report, you will find that the outcome is total number of VMs that can be added to this data store is 1, and the total CPUs is 4 CPUs, virtual CPUs. And because we have constraining resources is the free space, and this is why we can add only one VM with the specified resources that we gave at the beginning of the report. Now the last section is the analysis reports, where in this part we'll be focusing on your infrastructure and how your resources are being used by your virtual environment. So for example, the first report will be the data stores space usage heat maps, where you're going to specify specific data store, and you're going to specify the time frame and the specified growth threshold that you are expecting. And the cell capacity, when you're talking about cell capacity, you're specifying the graphical representation for each cell should be around 10 gigabytes. So when you run this report, you find something like this, where you have the total capacity and that you have, and the unknown files capacity that have consumed specific storage, and the free space as well, and the number of small VMs. And when you're talking about small VMs, we're talking about VMs that are consuming less than the specified, less than half of the specified cell capacity. In that case, it means that less than 5 gigabytes of storage. So in this report, we have two virtual machines that are consuming that have grown more than 15% in the last period that we have specified. So by this report, you have an overview of resources and how it's being used. The second type of report is the right sizing for your VMs. And this is very important for a large infrastructure as well as a small infrastructure. So you specify in the report the collection of virtual machines that you want, and you specify the sections that you're going to examine. In our case, it's going to be the memory and the virtual CPU. And of course, you specify the time frame that you want. So when you run the reports, you have two tables. The first table will be stating the number of CPUs that you can reclaim from each virtual machine. So for example, if we take Veeam virtual machine, we'll see that the maximum CPU is 15.18%, and the allocated CPU is 4 CPU. So we can reclaim 3 CPU because the recommendation is only 1 CPU for this virtual machine according to the workload. The second part of the report is the memory allocation. So if we are talking about the link front end, we'll see that the average CPU is 5% of the allocated memory. So we can reclaim around 4.9 gigabytes of RAM from it. So this report is very useful for your management of your resources, and it really helps in correctly sizing your virtual machine in your infrastructure. So at the end of the report, you will have a summary of the total RAM that you can reclaim as well as the CPU that you can reclaim. So there is this, if we have this such a report and we have this figures, it means that if you want to increase your services, if you want to expand your service area, there is no need to buy any additional hardware because this is sufficient for any other extra workload that can handle. So this uh, will be the end of our video for today.